Yes. All right, Jim. Oh, I'm still early. 10 seconds.
It is 3 p.m.
Okay, welcome those in attendance and those of you online. This will be Water Storage Committee meeting number 126. It's February 5th, 26 at 3 p.m. I am Brian Olmstead, Chairman of the Storage Committee. And Mylan, will you take a roll call and find out who's here from the committee and other board member?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barker,
Here.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Here.
Mr. Gibbs,
Here.
Mr. Raybould,
Here.
and of course, Chairman Olmstead.
Here.
Okay, and it looks like, Mr. Chairman, we also have Pat McMahon on the Zoom call as well.
Okay. And as you all might have seen the agenda, we will have some public comment for those in attendance after we have the presentation on the Snake River Basin proposal. So I'm going to turn it over, I guess, to Cynthia now to get us going on that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for joining us. And I'm just going to give a brief introduction and turn most of the time over to Amy Castle, who's joining us today. She's the lead for this project. And yes, as you mentioned, the Upper Snake River Basin Study proposal is the primary topic of today's meeting. I think most of you are familiar with the process that was began last year. The board received a request to pursue a basin study award, or I think a grant from Reclamation back, let's see, I guess it was middle of last year, and the board agreed to take that on, submitted a letter of interest to Reclamation on behalf of the state to initiate this project. That was approved, and the board was encouraged to move to the next step of the process, which is to submit a proposal to Reclamation. And that proposal is a 15-page document that Amy is going to walk through in detail today. I will say that given the timelines associated with that, we put together a team internally in the Planning and Projects Bureau, and also have utilized staff across the agency, largely from our hydrology staff, to help us build out the contents of this proposal. Our staff have also worked very closely with Reclamation's team on this. There is a local team dedicated to the Basin Study Program. And so that has consumed a fair amount of time just to, I guess, understand what is most the critical information that Reclamation needs to evaluate this proposal. They have a fairly well-defined process for scoring and evaluating particular information that needs to be part of those submittals. So that's, again, what we're going to talk about today. I do want to bring to your attention and any of those stakeholders who are watching today that or joining us in person, that in our work, through our work with Reclamation, the staff in working with their upward leadership teams gave us some feedback on the proposal. I think they were trying to assess what was critical information on our behalf, and determined that it would be in the board's best interest to add a little more detail in areas such as the timeline for the project, the budget for specific work tasks for the project. And so given that their recommendation is to provide more detail in those areas, they've recommended that the board entertain up to a 3-week extension on submittal of this proposal. And so we're going to talk about that a bit here today, but that would be the staff recommendation, to take advantage of that additional time And the added value in that is that then we can, the stakeholders who've been participating in this process from day one and may be interested in seeing what we've put together in the draft proposal will have a little more time to give the board their comments on the draft proposal. So we'll talk about the deadlines associated with that in a moment, but I did want to make you all aware of that, as well as some of our folks here who've been participating in the process as a stakeholder. So with that, again, the goal today is to have Amy walk through the draft proposal, to hear public comments from those who've come today who are in attendance, and then to talk about the next steps in terms of when the proposal will be submitted and how we can receive written comments. So with that, I'll turn it over, Mr. Chairman, to Amy Castle.
Welcome, Amy. And I want everybody here to know that Amy and her crew have worked really hard on a crunched timeline to try to get this proposal done. So we're hoping to have it possibly completed by today, or within a few days for board approval. But we have that extension now, and I think that will be well used to make the document better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Yeah, just to expand on the timeline. So originally, this proposal due date was February 16th. And we were definitely tracking towards getting our draft complete by that date. We've been working closely with Bureau of Reclamation staff, who is in lots of coordination and communication with the Denver staff that will be reviewing this proposal. And we just learned yesterday that one particular section of the proposal does need much more refinement than we originally anticipated. And that is in the study schedule, timeline, task list, and budget. We hadn't anticipated that level of detail, especially the budget detail that's required. And as I said, we just learned that was critical yesterday. So Bureau of Rec staff is recommending that we just ask for a 3-week extension. So we are coordinating with them right now to get that. And I guess the silver lining is that it gives us more time to refine our task list, our timeline, our budget. And it also gives stakeholders essentially a week from tomorrow to submit written comments. So we welcome comments today, of course, from those folks in the room. And then we look forward to any written comments that can be emailed to me directly by next Friday. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think my plan, it's a 15-page document, so I'm obviously not going to read it line by line. I'm just going to talk about the first couple pages. We'll probably look closely at the abstract because that includes the scope. But then the rest of the proposal, I will just kind of summarize and scroll through. So we, of course, have I'm kind of zoomed in. We have a cover page here. We have table of contents. All of this is in draft, so we're still working on those things and getting them buttoned up. We have project information. So this is the study area and geographic boundaries. We've got to fine tune a few things on this map, but essentially the proposed study area encompasses the upper Snake River Basin above Milner Dam, including the main stem Snake River and all tributary basins upstream of Milner and the entirety of the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. This was in the letter of interest, this exact study area and geographic boundaries. Total cost of study, and as we refine that budget and task list and timeline, I don't anticipate this changing, but the estimated total cost of the study is $5 million, which the board will provide half of that. So $2.5 million per partner. This is just contact information for the responsible parties. And then we'll take a kind of a closer look at the study abstract before I just get into summarizing the rest of the proposal. So, the abstract, it's just about one page, in this proposal. So we look at scope, we look at approach, objectives, and then what is the planned, use of these study results? So, this basin study will encompass the Snake River Basin upstream Milner Dam, as I mentioned, that's our geographic location. The study area represents a highly interconnected hydrologic.
Hey, Amy.
Yeah.
Amy, this is Brian. It would be helpful to me if you could increase the font size a little
Oh.
bit on your screen and maybe to
Abs-
people in the audience, because
Absolutely.
most people have not seen this yet, so
Yes, no, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
that's better.
Is that better? Okay. And I can get a little bigger here. So the basin study will assess current and future conditions and identify adaptation strategies to address basin-wide water supply and demand imbalances. Here is basically a bullet list of what our approach is. So we will look at current water supply, demand, and conditions. We will assess future water supply and demand conditions and consider, population projections, climate variability. We will evaluate the system performance and reliability under changing hydrologic realities. We will identify and screen structural and non-structural adaptation strategies. So that's a reference to the existing infrastructure, storage infrastructure. And then we will conduct a trade-off analysis of alternatives based on cost, environmental impact, risk, and stakeholder considerations. So the objectives here that we have listed, as I said, we will identify those current and future imbalances. We obviously have a lot of this data at our disposal already. So in theory, that will help us with developing a faster timeline. So we will inventory and assess existing storage and operations, identify inefficiencies and potentially unrealized capacity in our existing infrastructure, and screen new or expanded storage opportunities. And then the use of these study results, these will be technical assessments. So they will essentially provide a technical foundation for future planning and investment decisions. And these results will inform additional studies such as appraisal studies, feasibility studies, and pilot projects. So this is just a bulleted list of what we will do, utilizing water supplies to better align with seasonal and annual demand, looking at increasing effective storage and operational flexibility, reducing those seasonal and long-term imbalances, improving conjunctive management outcomes and aquifer stabilization, and enhancing drought resilience while maintaining compliance with legal and environmental obligations. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna scroll through. Like I said, this is a 15-page document. I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna summarize each of these sections and essentially what these sections are providing to the reader. So,
Hey, Amy,
yeah,
because it's a fairly long document, if one of the committee members has a question, we might stop you during your presentation, but if not, just keep right on going.
absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want, Amy, would you explain those criteria? Are these criteria that we've selected, or are these criteria that the reclamation project requires us to be measured against?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, really good thing to point out. All of these evaluation criteria are specifically stated in the proposal template provided by Bureau of Reclamation. So this is not our criteria, this is their criteria, this is what they want to see in the proposal. So everything, as I go through this, I'll point out what is in that proposal template. So first criteria 1, which is in the proposal template, they are asking that we provide and explain the extent and consequences of existing or anticipated imbalances in water supply demand. Mr. Barker, did that answer your question?
It does, Amy, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so summarizing this section, I mean, essentially, we're establishing why the region matters, why the Upper Snake River Basin underpins Idaho's agriculture, drinking water, hydropower, ecosystems, recreation, all of the things that are so important to the state in the basin. It shows that available water is effectively appropriated. So we go into, you know, what is the status of the region as far as water supply and current supply conditions. This section explains how past practices and changing conditions have created today's problems. So we have, scroll down to the very well-known graph that we show in a lot of meetings. So we talk a little bit how historic irrigation boosted aquifer storage, but efficiency gains, increased pumping, climate variability, reduced snowpack, and earlier runoff have reversed those gains and have led to major long-term declines in aquifer storage and spring flows. We talk about how there's been a number of management actions that we have taken over the years, programs like the ESPA camp and mitigation plans, which I'll go into more detail here shortly, have slowed or nearly stabilized declines, but conditions remain far below historic levels. This section highlights our increasing reliance on reservoirs and our growing shortage risk. There's a lot of text that's kind of signals those future pressures, you know, continued population growth, economic development, and climate-driven changes are expected to further strain an already limited and less reliable water supply. And this section, we talk about how impacts are basin-wide and multi-sector, how they affect agriculture, cities, industry, tribes, ecosystems, recreation, hydropower, all of those sectors that depend on this system, and why these shortages ripple across economic, cultural, and environmental uses. So we list all of those sectors here and describe in detail. So that is criteria 1, and that is scored at, I believe, 30 points is my memory. Sorry, really making you guys dizzy here. Yes, so that's a pretty important section to describe our current situation and why this basin study is important. And then this criteria 2, it's a big one. There's 4 different sections of this, the extent to which the proposal describes and provides support for the study's proponents' ability to address the following elements within the time frame required. So the first one is projections of water supply and demand within the basin. So we're looking at things such as climate variability, you know, snowpack is shrinking and melting earlier, which shifts runoff to earlier in the year, out of sync when irrigation and other demands are highest. The timing problem is important as the volume problem. Water demand is increasing even without population growth. So with rising temperatures, driving higher ET, evapotranspiration, these climate-driven demands climate-driven demand increases collide with declining summer supply. So hotter summers increase irrigation needs precisely when stream flows are projected to be lower, intensifying competition for limited water storage. And there are just meaningful risks that we have not fully quantified. So we address that as well. So that is that section A. Getting down to B, analysis of how existing water and power infrastructure and operations perform in the face of changing water realities, such as population increases and climate change. So here we talk a lot about how groundwater is the backbone of river flows and hydropower in this part of Idaho. aquifer levels in the SPA control how much water enters the Snake River downstream of Milner Dam. But small changes in groundwater storage have outsized consequences. Climate variability and growth intensify competition for the same water. Earlier and faster snowmelt forces operators, reservoir operators to release water earlier for flood control, reducing the amount of water that can be stored and used later in the irrigation season when demand is highest. But these consequences extend beyond water and power. So that is section B. Again, these are all scored, so that's why we go into quite a bit of detail. Scrolling down to C. So development of appropriate adaptation and mitigation strategies. And so this is the section where we get to highlight all of the current mitigation strategies that we have in place. So we have, the board has implemented a broad, well-established suite of tools, recharge, grant programs, cloud seeding, monitoring and modeling to slow aquifer decline and manage conflict. These strategies are working, but storage is a key component. We make the case that the state has the technical capacity to evaluate these solutions. We've made ongoing investments in monitoring, modeling, and data collection that demonstrate the ability to support a sophisticated basin study analysis within the required timelines. And obviously, making the clear point that additional storage, looking at existing facilities and evaluation of new or expanded storage is a key remaining lever to address future imbalance. So that is C. And then D, we talk about this, we're asked about this trade-off analysis of the strategies identified and findings. So, and this is pretty much the case. This is what basin studies do. They will not just list these possible solutions, but compare them and help decision makers determine the most viable strategies. So the goal of the basin study is, of course, look at all of these proposed strategies and evaluate them side by side using clear criteria, looking at costs, environmental effects, impacts to the water budget, risks, stakeholder acceptance. Unrealistic or unacceptable options will be screened out early. The process follows a proven framework. The outcome will be practical and decision focused. And it's really important that there's a lot of transparency in this process. So that is criteria 2D. Getting into criteria 3. So criteria 3 was primarily drafted by Bureau of Reclamation because it's the section that focuses on the strength of any nexus between the basin study and a reclamation project. Of course, there is in this case. Reclamation provides the technical foundation for the study, helps provide the technical foundation for the study. They maintain the operation-based riverware model for the Upper Snake Basin. Reclamation has unique institutional knowledge, decades of model development, operational experience, and access to historic data, position reclamation to make credible system-wide updates and analysis within the study timeframe. The study directly affects reclamation-owned infrastructure. As we all know, many of the basin's major dams and reservoirs are owned and operated by reclamation, meaning any evaluation of storage operations or flow management necessarily involves these federal facilities in decision-making. And the work aligns with Reclamation's national mission, which is planning for water reliability, supports Reclamation's broader mandate to manage water supplies for agriculture, cities, energy, and industry across the West. So, like I said, that criteria 3 was primarily drafted by Reclamation staff. And then getting down to criteria 4. This is the availability and quality of existing data and models. So this is where we list our suite of tools in our toolbox between Reclamation and the Department of Water Resources. We have a lot of data sets, and we have long, well-established models already in place, and that shows the folks in Denver that because of these existing tools, it will reduce uncertainty, cost, and schedule risk in this basin study. The data and the models are trusted and operationally proven. We can show that, using eSPAM and riverware, surface water and groundwater can be analyzed together. We have a full suite we have a monitoring network that is extensive and current. And then we can show that these agencies, the Water Board, IDWR, Reclamation, collectively maintain and update these systems, showing they can assess future conditions and respond to emergency supply-demand imbalances. Getting down to criteria 5, this is the level of support for the basin study and diversity of stakeholders that will be involved. And we showed a slide during the stakeholder meeting a couple of weeks ago. I think it was January 16th, actually, on how we plan to have a clear, inclusive plan for engaging a wide range of stakeholders in a structured and effective way. We're taking stakeholder involvement very seriously. The study is intentionally designed around engagement and communication. Participation will be both technically rigorous and inclusive. So we have these separate groups defined to handle technical analysis, executive level coordination, and open participation from all interested or affected parties. We're contemplating using a third-party consultant, which I think signals an effort to ensure neutrality, transparency, and a productive dialogue, diverse interests. I'm doing a lot of reading here. And then we will attach, we have, I think, 23 pages in letters of support from key stakeholders. So that is criteria 5, and then 6, the extent to which the proposed study will employ an integrated watershed planning and management approach. So a basin study fits pretty squarely within Idaho's longstanding integrated watershed planning framework and builds on existing coordinated surface water, groundwater management efforts. So our planning process already explicitly treats surface water, groundwater, infrastructure, ecosystems, and economic uses as interconnected parts of a single watershed system. The basin study aligns with established state policy and planning. And we have this proven framework through the state water plan and the ESPPA camp to show that we already have an integrated management in place. Okay, so those are the evaluation criteria that are scored. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the study outline and schedule, we had a pretty high level study outline, task list, and schedule. And as I said previously, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we learned that we're not providing enough detail, and we needed more information regarding the budget as well. So with that, we determined it was in our best interest to request an extension and work through those details. We plan to have a workshop with Bureau of Rec staff and and really hammer that out so we can be set up for success with this proposal. And then we have quite a few references for the proposal. And then the final section, which thankfully does not count towards your page limit of 15 pages, is this appendix, which just consists of all the letters of support from stakeholders. So with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I will stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So I guess first, any questions for Amy from committee members?
Mr. Chairman. Amy,
Yes.
are we still soliciting additional letters of support? Can we get those, or should we be asking for those on top of what we've already gotten?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, I think we would always welcome additional letters of support. All the letters of support we have to date, and I did go back to Shauna Adams with the Minidoka Irrigation District and double checked that I had everything that she has, and I do. So everything that she received is in this package. But if there are stakeholders out there that would like to still submit a letter, we would gladly welcome them.
Other board members' questions? Any or other board members not on the committee? Okay, Amy, I've got one or two questions. One regarding the Henry's Fork Basin study, which is, I don't know, a fourth or so of this entire basin. Will the that was probably large extent different bureau staff that worked on that. Will a lot of that, I know this is not really for the proposal, but do you anticipate, for instance, all those reservoir sites that were studied in the Henry's Basin study, will those reservoir sites have to be re-studied for new surface storage, or are those already kind of in the hopper, I guess?
I think I can answer that, Mr. Chairman. We do make mention in here of the Henry's Fork Basin study, and we will definitely leverage everything that we learned from that basin study for this basin study. So that is one of the documents that we make reference to that. And there was an appraisal study. Well, I'm not sure if I should use the term appraisal study. There was a study done on Minidoka as well. So those documents will definitely be looked at throughout this basin study process.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. I think all the technical aspects of the Henry's Fork Basin study are still sound. We'll have to look at them and make sure. I think what we would need to do is redo the cost analysis of the different opportunities.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions or comments from Water Board or committee members? Well, I guess you're good, Amy. Then we'll move on to the next item, which will be public comment for those in attendance. So I didn't notice if anybody signed up, but anybody in the audience care to make a public comment?
Chairman Olmstead, I'm Brian Murdoch. First making comments, I first need to apologize for abandoning my duties during the January committee meetings, which you had, board meetings. I unfortunately had a wife who called me up and said I needed to come home. with 2 sick grandchildren or else, and I didn't want to see what the or else was, so I left immediately. So I was not doing my groupie duties last board meeting. But concerning this, I want to voice my support, my continued support for this. I have a few questions that after listening to Amy's presentation, I'd like to ask, and that is, okay, these written comments that you're asking for, is that for the benefit of the water board and Amy's proposal, or are these written comments for the Bureau of Reclamation? Who are the written comments to be directed to and for?
For us.
Those comments will be directed to the water board, Brian. And of course, Amy will be, collecting all that stuff and continuing to work on the document until what's the cutoff date? Next Friday, Amy? On the comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we will post this draft proposal on the board's website. And our hope is that interested stakeholders will review it and provide written comments after they review it, if they have any.
Okay, and then my next question, for those of us who've already written letters of support back when you were doing the LOI, do you need an additional letter of support, or are you using those same letters?
You're using the same letters.
Those same letters will be fine, Brian. And of course, after you see this document, which will be posted that Amy's reviewed today, then you might have additional comments, but your support letter should be adequate how it is.
Okay, the only other thing that I would probably, a couple other things that I would like to address was a couple weeks ago during the water users conference, I was talking with a lot of the stakeholders who are involved in this process. Some of them were feeling left out now that we have somewhat turned this over to the water board, and they would of course still like some sort of involvement in here. I guess I would propose to you, I guess for lack of a better way of saying it, a subcommittee of a small subcommittee of 5 to represent some of those groups. For instance, I would probably suggest you would get Shauna Adams as a member of the surface water users, and then possibly Brad Butters as a member of the groundwater users, possibly Brandon Hoffner as a member of the Trout Unlimited or Henry's Fork Foundation, because he's also went through this process with the Henry Fork study, and then either one of possibly the Michaels, as I joke, either Michael Komeski or Michael Fuss for a technical advisor, and have this be a small committee, just to where then you have the input from the stakeholders, where it helps you guys determine how you want to write and add what needs to be added. I know that it became very enlightening listening to Brandon Hoffner at the water users, because he was pointing out how the last basin study pointed out things that they want included in this scope, because then this makes it to where later on they can get federal funding for these projects through grants or something like that, because this has already been highlighted through this study. Something like they talked about Conant Creek, and that was highlighted during the Henry's Fork study. And so therefore, if the Bureau of Rec has already recommended it, it was easier for them to get the funding for that project. And so this became obvious to me. This is one of the things that will help us have the support from the environmental groups, is if we kind of make sure that those are in there, even though in the end, those won't be possibly part of the solutions for this study. I guess last, I will just highlight, and I'll throw a bone to my Stantec representatives that are also here in the room. I read a study the other day, and it was called Tapping the Potential, the Economic Benefits of Investing in Water Infrastructure, in which the Stantec company put out the other day. Very highlighting, even though this was not talking about water reservoirs in particular. It was talking about more other water projects, just like probably the Mountain Home Air Force Base came to mind, in which that report basically stated that for every $1 million invested in those type of water structures, you could get a return of $4 million in either the economic development or GDP. And so that begs me to where I'm saying, if we can get a 1 to 4 on something like that, our investment in these water projects that we're trying to do, the dams and reservoirs, ought to be similar or somewhere in that same vicinity. And so this is where it behooves us to look at this as an investment as much as a needed opportunity. And I think that it would pay back in spades. And that's my comments. Any questions?
Thank you, Brian. Of course, our immediate goal is that we have 21 days or so to get this proposal submitted. So we get, our goal is to get this Water Smart grant and get the basin study going. But I'm going to let Amy answer the question on the stakeholder group, because I think the document envisions that there will be 4 groups and one of them will be stakeholders. I don't know how, Amy, do you envision how we set the size on that? How do we get that group designated?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the criteria, excuse me, let me just grab it if I can. Lost it. We specifically describe, and we did this in a slide as well during that January, I believe it was the 16th stakeholder meeting, teams meeting. But we're envisioning a technical committee, which will consist of technical staff, the modeling teams primarily from both reclamation and IDWR. Then there will be an executive committee, which will be reclamation staff and board staff, and we'll really focus that committee on how to effectively and successfully communicate what we're doing in the basin study. And then the work, I think we're calling it the basin study work group. That will be anyone and everyone that has a vested interest in it. I don't think there would be any limitation to numbers. Anyone that has a vested interest in the basin study. So those are the 3 groups that we are envisioning. And that approach has been used in other basin studies in the West and has proved successful.
Chairman?
Go ahead, Brian. What was the rest of your question?
Probably my suggestion was more for the board, as a subcommittee to the board, to help them go through all this and make these decisions. I know that study working group, as Amy said, it would be a large group. How effective that is, and I'm thinking something much smaller that can help you make these decisions. Meanwhile, it's back to small enough to get something to be effective and large enough to be representative. And like I said, I was proposing this more for the water board, and not necessarily immediately, but because we don't have much time, but possibly after we get done with this process. I just know that there are groups out there that are feeling, I wouldn't use the term disenfranchised, but they feel like they're getting left behind and they want to have more to do with the decision-making of this process. And if we keep the key components together, I think it will make it more effective and make it work better. That's just my belief.
We'll sure take that all in consideration. Thank you, Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you.
Are there others who want to make a public comment today? Okay, Cynthia or Brian, what's next?
Okay. Got it.
I think Mr. Chairman, I think Amy covered that well. I think what we'll want to do coming out of this meeting is notify, we've been developing a fairly lengthy list of those stakeholders. We'll try and notify them by email what this new strategy is for collecting comments. It may be simple for them to just go ahead and email Amy directly. So again, we'll make sure that they have her email information and we'll reiterate what our deadline is to receive some comments. And then I think the expectation is that, as Amy mentioned, if we can receive comments by the 13th, our team will also be working closely with Reclamation to try and finalize things. Then we will want to come back to the Water Board in a special meeting to let you see the final proposed product. We would like a recommendation to go ahead and advance that for submittal to Reclamation at that time. And all of this, I think we're working on that timeline based on when we get that new defined drop dead date from Reclamation. So we'll try and publish that for everybody who's tracking. And I think that'll be the next step from our standpoint, Mr. Chairman.
And of course, Cynthia, we need, people need to know that these comments that are due by next Friday, we need to be pretty specific that these are to, get approval of the proposal to do the basin study. So
That's correct.
So then, we'll put, all the meat on, if we get approved for the basin study, then we'll be putting on a lot of meat onto all those bones from the stakeholder groups, technical people, staff and water board. But in this short run, the comments should be, supporting, or if they're negative on the proposal that we're submitting. Want to get the grant is our number one goal.
Yes, thank you. I agree completely. And certainly if there are other comments about the next steps, we'll certainly take those, but we do want to prioritize trying to make sure that we're taking into consideration any of these near-term ideas.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments on the proposal that Amy has worked on along with the other folks in the department. I think it's a really good summary. Everybody needs to understand who may be interested in commenting that we have a page limit, that we don't get to write a 400-page proposal. We've got to focus on what we think are the best reasons to comply with the criteria that we've been given from Reclamation, because we're asking to be part of this reclamation process. And the other thing I would note for Brian is that I've been involved in enough water negotiations that somebody's always going to be complaining about being left out. And the more you shrink the group of people who are perceived to be the decision makers, the more you're going to hear about decisions getting made behind closed doors and people getting left out. And so if we have this, we'll think about it. It's a fair comment that it's hard to make decisions with a group of 50 people, but if you shrink it too small, then we're going to get criticisms that we've left people out who feel like they haven't been heard. So it's a balance that we got to figure out. And so think about that if you decide to submit any other comments on this. And I guess the other thing we could do is the proposal doesn't say exactly how this stakeholder committee is going to be formed. It just says we're going to have one. And so we can make those decisions later on down the road, assuming that we do get approved to move ahead with this basin study, which I think everybody's pretty confident we will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Al, and Board Chairman Jeff. Do you remember how the stakeholder group was put together on the Henry's Fork Basin study?
On the Henry's Fork Basin, Mr. Chairman, we used the Henry's Fork Watershed Council as the facilitator, kind of the entity that was utilized to bring people together. And it seems like there was some kind of a letter that went out from reclamation to any interested parties that wanted to participate in the study as a stakeholder, that they were welcome to come and attend the meetings. Seems to me like most of those meetings had, I don't know, 50 or 60 people at them. It was a pretty large turnout, a lot of interest. I assume we're going to have the same or more for this basin study. And but that'll all get worked out as we move forward. But there'll be ample opportunity for public input into this process. Right now, I think what we need to do is confine our concerns to, do we have the best possible scoping document to give reclamation to make the strongest case possible to get this basin study off the ground and moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Raybould.
Mr. Chairman, you're at other items.
Other items, anybody on the committee first? Other board members online?
Okay. I do have one scheduling item, Mr. Chairman. For the board members, we had set a special board meeting for February 10th at 2 p.m. to initially thinking we were going to be able to approve the basin study submittal. And now that there's a 15-day extension on that, we'll have to set another board meeting. But we do want to keep that February 10th special board meeting date to deal with some Coeur d'Alene and Spokane River Basin adjudication items on that day that have come up that the board needs to be aware of. So we'll be looking to keep that day and have a special briefing for the board, perhaps an executive session on Coeur d'Alene River Basin adjudication issues.
So that then will be a short special board meeting, and will that one be public comment also?
It will probably be a one-item executive session board meeting, Mr. Chairman.
And then the board meeting, when we will vote on this revised proposal, then we don't have a schedule for that one yet?
No, we don't. We haven't set it yet, but it will be about 15 days out, give or take, based on reclamation's revised due date for us.
Any other items, anybody? Do we need a motion to adjourn for committee, or we just?
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
It's moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign.